Why? Why are we afraid to talk about our age as we get older? Why do some of us dread the idea of getting older? I mean, I admit I certainly was in that camp in my 30s, dreading to hit that big 4-0 as if I would catastrophically feel like, quote unquote, a really old person. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of PS Younger Self. I'm your host, Chris. And my question today, a few, are how comfortable are you at your age? How comfortable do you feel about getting older? Have you ever lied about your age? I know there's a lot of fascinating scientific research around how we can slow down aging and even reverse our age, which I couldn't get enough of exploring and learning from the renowned Harvard professor and biologist at the forefront of research on aging, Dr. David Sinclair. And if you haven't dove into his research, I would highly, highly recommend it. But my question and the topic of today's episode isn't so much centered around the biological process of aging, or as Dr. David Sinclair puts it, quote, aging is a disease and that disease is treatable, end quote. Rather, my question is around our psychological perception of getting older with age. This is a question I struggled with myself, and for a bit, I have been very curious why some of us, actually many, are uncomfortable with getting older, or prefer not to share their real age or even lie about their age to make people think they are younger. It got me thinking, why? Why are we afraid to talk about our age as we get older? Why do some of us dread the idea of getting older? I mean, I admit I certainly was in that camp in my 30s, dreading to hit that big 4-0 as if I would catastrophically feel like, quote unquote, a really old person. But you know what? Ironically, to my surprise, since I hit my big 4-0 2 years ago, I've been thinking and repeating the same thing over and over to my friends and people I meet when I hit on this topic of age. I can love getting older, especially because I certainly feel I've acquired more wisdom and self-confidence, which has allowed me to be unapologetically self-assured with who I am and not afraid to own it. And by the way, I learned that wisdom is actually embedded in our biological genome. What? Yet I admit I too spend quite a bit of money to maintain a youthful appearance, whether it's on expensive anti-aging skincare, regular facials, or even testing Botox. Am I chasing youth? Perhaps. But is society really to blame for our obsession with chasing youth and our negative perception and even shame of getting older? Well, if you live in the Western society, you can't deny that there is significantly greater value weighted on youth and looking younger. While in some Eastern cultures, getting older is more highly valued as it's associated with acquiring wisdom. There are venerated so much so that there is even a public holiday in Japan celebrating the elderly called Respect for the Aged Day in September. So, is our perception of aging socially constructed? Well, interesting research says so that I found it fascinating that it varies depending on the cultural context. For example, a sociological paper on the perspective of aging states that even the meaning of young and old are socially constructed and provided this example. While in the US, people are not considered old or senior citizen until they are in their 60s. However, in Chad, since the average life expectancy is less than 49 years of age, people in their 30s or 40s are therefore already middle-aged or old. These differences in people's perception of who and when one is considered old or young indicates that notions of youth and age are culturally constructed. And Arianna Huffington also described an experience of Greek elderly respect in her book on becoming fearless. Quote, 10 years ago, I visited the monastery of Tahari on the island of Rhodes with my children. There, as in all of Greece, abbots are addressed by everyone as Granada, which means old man. Abscesses are called Granadisa, not exactly terms of endearment in my adopted home. The idea of honoring old age, indeed, identifying it with wisdom and closeness to God, is in startling contrast to the way we treat aging in America, end quote. And I agree. Personally speaking, and perhaps why my views on getting older are conflicted is because I'm Korean American, born in Korea, but raised in the States since I was one. So obviously grew up with a heavily westernized cultural influence, albeit my parents always instilled our Korean culture at home, and I'm very grateful for it. In our Korean culture, there's a fundamental value linked to showing respect to our parents and anyone older than you, Even if it's by a year, you would have to speak to them in honorifics, which are special titles in the Korean language. And even outside the family unit, Koreans are socialized to respect to older individuals as well as authority figures. And it's also customary in our culture to have big celebrations for the 60th and 70th birthdays when children celebrate of their parents passing into old age. Another example is within the Indian culture where many live in joint family units and the elders are the head of the family. So, if we understand that our perception of getting older, not the biological aspect of aging, is socially constructed, can we shift our own personal perception and narrative of what it means to get older and not only see the beauty in it and honor it, but also own it? Own the journey you get to take on every year as you get older, and the privilege to discover yourself through that journey as a new person each year. P.S. Younger self. Own your age with pride. And thank you everyone for tuning in to another episode of PS Younger Self. It really means a lot to me that you're spending your time with me. So if you like this episode, please be sure to subscribe at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or just about anywhere you listen to your podcast. And leave me a review. Tell me what you think. It really helps me get more valuable content to you guys. So until next time, take care and remember to always live your life on your own terms.